Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be showing you how I made her wings. If you would like to see her repaint video, I have that up on my channel and I will also link it in the description below. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the video. There's a handful of supplies needed for this wing method. I will be using Angelina film for her wings, and this film is by the brand More is More in the shade Butterfly Blue. I was introduced to this brand of film by Lady Dynamite Create. She used this in one of her videos and I loved the result. I will be using pliers to form the 16 gauge stem wire today. Last time I made bat wings, I underestimated the weight of the wings and I ended up having to do quite a bit of troubleshooting because the wire just wasn't strong enough to carry that much weight. I will be using a stiffer wire for the outer portion of the wings today, and hopefully that will remedy that issue. For the inner bones of the wings, I'm going to use this 20 gauge wire. I have both a lighter and a candle here. I will also be using these wire cutters.
I start by making a rough sketch of the wings. This just helps me get the size and shape that I want, but I also use this when I start forming the wires. I wanted to apologize in advance for the filming being sideways. I filmed it this way because I wanted to make sure that you were able to see the entire wing, but I also didn't want to zoom you out too far.
Once I have my wings sketched out, I am going to take some parchment paper, tape it down over the top, and then I will use a Sharpie to trace the outline onto the parchment paper so that it's a little bit easier to follow.
Jumping in just to let you know that using parchment paper at this stage is unnecessary, as I'll soon find out. Using the sketch on the paper works just fine.
I'm going to leave the wire a little bit longer than needed so that I have plenty of length to work with when it comes to attaching the wings to her back. I can always cut the wire if I have more than I need and shape the wire to follow this outline. I will be forming the claw out of clay, but the reason why I drew it in is so when I attach this wire, I can make sure that falls underneath this claw so that I can cover up that slightly messy looking area with the epoxy sculpt.
I attempted to use a hot glue gun to tack down the wires and help hold everything in place temporarily. I have seen this work for other people, but unfortunately for me and this purpose, it just wasn't strong enough to provide much hold, so I wouldn't really recommend it.
I plan to form the wings after the Angelina film is on. I'm afraid that if I form the wings first, I am going to have a really hard time applying the film. But before I do that, I will paint the wires black and make my epoxy sculpt claws. There are quite a few imperfections in the paint, and that's okay. It does not need to be perfect. The Angelina film is slightly translucent, but you won't be able to see the wire underneath all that well anyway. I will be taking equal amounts of epoxy sculpt part A and B, mixing those together thoroughly with gloves on. I know it looks like a shark tooth right now, but once the epoxy sculpt dries, I will definitely be sanding and shaping this. I'm not too worried about how it's looking at this point. I just want to get it on there, and then I can work on the details once it's dry. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. I used just a tiny bit of water on my fingertip to help smooth out the clay. I forgot that I need to apply the epoxy sculpt sculpt to this part of the wing so it will fit inside the little holes in her back. I am first going to bend the wires into shape, then I will apply the epoxy sculpt over the top and let it dry for 24 hours. I just did a super messy job applying the epoxy sculpt, but I will go back in just like with the claws once it's completely dry and refine the shape. Using my Dremel tool and a sanding block, I refined the shape of the claws and the part that will attach to the back. I also applied a coat of black acrylic paint to the wings, and now that that's dried, I am taking Liquitex High Gloss Varnish to seal in the paint and prevent chipping. The downside to the varnish is that of course it makes it glossy, so to combat that, once the varnish is dried, I will spray a coat of MSC on the wings. MSC is highly toxic, so I spray that outside with a respirator mask, eyewear, and protective clothing per the instructions. Please be sure to read the safety warnings before using any of the materials mentioned in this video. I think I changed my mind about mattifying the claws. It looks a little bit like patent leather, and I can always mattify it later on if I change my mind, so I think for now I'm going to leave the wings as is and start working on applying the Angelina film. I was pretty excited to learn that this time around the Angelina film covers the entire wingspan. The last time I made wings for my dragon girl, unfortunately I had to piece several sections of the film together in order to cover the entire wing. So I'm very excited that I don't need to go through those additional steps this time. What I've done is cut 4 sheets of Angelina film to length. For each wing, I'll have a piece of Angelina film both on the bottom and the top side of the wings. So I start out by taping down the bottom piece. I take a very sparing amount of Aleene's tacky glue and I apply this to the wing. If you overdo the glue, it will be visible through the Angelina film. So I try to use a minimal amount. Once I have the wing glued down, I can apply tacky glue to the alternate side. When it comes to the top, I am going to have to cut out a little notch and glue down the top piece. I then take my X-Acto blade and cut the excess film off, and I leave a little bit around the edges. I've got my old hair straightener here and I have it on its lowest setting. Once I have the excess film cut away, I wrap the wing in parchment paper and flat iron over it. I don't want to stay in any particular spot for too long because you can burn through the film. This basically adheres the 2 sheets of Angelina film. Now we finally get to the fun part, and that is where we get to use heat to form and shape the film. I have to be very careful with this step because it can very easily get out of control. A good example of this on this wing, I got a little bit too much heat here and burned a hole in a place that I didn't want to. For forming the film around the edges of the wire, I like to use a tea light candle. It's much easier than holding the lighter, which gets very hot. I have it way over here because I'm trying to keep my phone safe. I very carefully start to form the film around the wire.
I put a band-aid on my thumb just to provide a little bit of protection against the heat from the lighter.
Running the lighter along the edge will make a clean edge. I kind of like it to be more jagged. The way to get that effect is by taking the lighter in and out. Once I get one wing done, I flip it over so I can get the other one to roughly match. I like to add the holes by taking a pin and heating it for just a little bit, and once that is hot, it will puncture through easily.
After I puncture the hole, I very carefully hold it over the flame, and that will expand the holes.
I really recommend doing this on a test piece of film first so that you can kind of get an idea of how the film will react to the flame. It can create those holes pretty quickly. Now that we're sufficiently holy, I have the task of trying to form the wings. I have to do this before I apply the 3D lacquer, which hardens the wings a little bit and provides some protection. I've got my vampy girl here. I'm going to insert the wing into her back and just kind of hold it in place. And then I'm going to very carefully bend the wing. Alright, I think that's about as bendy as I'm brave enough to get, so I will make the other wing match. I did struggle a little bit with the film pulling away from the wire, but anywhere that it was lifting, I just applied a little bit of UV resin and that took care of it. Now that I have the wings formed, I can apply this 3D lacquer. It's also from the brand More is More, which is where I got my film from. It basically just makes them more durable. I apply a couple of coats of this to both sides. To stay on the safe side, I wait around an hour to let each layer dry. I do try to work quickly with this to avoid brush strokes in it. I applied 3 coats to each side, and I applied one more coat of the Liquitex High Gloss Varnish to the claws just to seal in the paint, and I think they're ready to be attached. If her hair wasn't going to be covering her back, I would probably take a little bit more care covering the connection point, but in this case, since it's going to be covered, I think I'll just be lazy and glue them in place. I'm just going to take a little bit of Gorilla Super Glue Gel and attach the wings that way. They fit in there pretty snug even without the glue, so that should be good enough to keep them in place. If you would like that area to look a little bit neater, you can always take clay and wrap it around the base and blend it into the skin tone or paint it whatever color the wings are, and that will just kind of help hide that connection. Please let me know in the comment section down below what else you'd like to see from me. I have another Viking repaint planned next. I will insert a picture of the Viking I previously did. I definitely have some repaints in the works, but if there's anything else you'd like to see from me, please let me know. And she is done, so I will insert some final pictures of her. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe for future content. Until then, take care, and I hope to see you next time. Oh gosh. Wow. It's really moving it.